All right, so I think we should start with the introduction so we can start on time with our session proper. So, again, good morning, everyone. It's another early start with today's fire session. But don't worry because we make sure that all our sessions under the Firestarter Incubation Program with you are worth waking up to on your Saturdays. So, today's topics delve on something that is crucial to what makes you a startup, pandemic or not. So remember when we mentioned before that you have to be to be a registered entity in the Philippines to be legally recognized as a startup. Well, we've invited experts to help you understand the reason behind that as well as on how to register your business with DTI and as a corporation. Our program will run from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, with each speaker being allotted to talk about their topic and address your queries for 1 hour. All right. So the first part of our session is a talk facilitated by Engineer Edward Paul Apigo, who is a Senior Science Research Specialist at the Research Information and Technology Transfer Division, otherwise known as if it wasn't for the pandemic, you'd probably have met him because he's one of the most active individuals who oversee RTBI. Sir Edward will be talking to you about the importance of registering your startup and the perks it goes with. Of course, we have to make sure to ease you in and understand the point of this session before we head on to the complicated topic. So without further ado, I'll be giving the virtual floor now.
Hi, Miss Shore. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Can you hear me clearly ba?
I can.
Okay. So, maayong buntag sa tanan. Can I ask, is Geisha here to share my PowerPoint? Ayun. So, once again, maayong buntag sa tanan. This is not my usual Saturday morning, but I am really happy to be here with you this morning. So, let me thank first the CDO b.i.t.e.s for inviting me to join you in your incubation sessions or Firestarter. I actually like the word Firestarter kasi parang ang ganda ng branding ng CDO b.i.t.e.s. So parang naka-jackpot kayo dyan. And also, I would like to say hello also to my fellow speakers, Ms. Roseanne and Attorney Inopia, who's also joining us this morning. So again, thank you CDO b.i.t.e.s for this opportunity to speak to your startups or incubatees about the subject matter that I will be discussing this morning. So next slide, please. All right, so once again, I'm Engineer Edward Paul Apigo, the Senior Science Officer of the Philippine Council for Industry, Energy and Emerging Technology Research and Development, or PSEERD. And my topic is on the importance of startup registration in relation to the Innovative Startup Act. So just a quick question, Ms. Shore. From your current lineup of incubatees, meron na ba sa kanilang registered na sa DTI or to any government entity or SEC?
Yes, meron. As far as I know, with DTI pa. Because they're having not exactly difficulties, pero mahirap sa kanila mag-SEC register.
Okay. Sige. So there. So if you look at this slide, I actually found this cute photo that I really wanted to put in my slide. Sabi ko, saan ko kaya siya ilalagay? Kasi parang ang cute ng picture niya. It's basically government providing money to startup. So nilagay ko na lang siya sa title slide just to show everyone that in a nutshell, startup registration is a step to getting government support. So hindi naman yan agad-agad na government will provide you the funds or the support that you need. But the very first thing that you really need to do is to register your startup. So next slide, please. But before I discuss further, for those who are not yet familiar about b.i.t.e.s, so we are one of the three sectoral planning councils of the Department of Science and Technology, and we are mandated to serve as the central agency in the formulation of policies, plans, and programs, as well as in the implementation of strategies in industry, energy, and emerging technology sectors through several science and technology So our mandate is to support for, next slide please, is to provide support for technology, support for research and development, human resource and institution development. We also provide support for science and technology information dissemination and promotion. Support for technology transfer and commercialization. That's the division or unit where I belong. And lastly, we also provide support for policy development and advocacy. So next slide, please. So as far as our division is concerned, so one of our major programs specifically for startup is the Technology Business Incubation Program, or the TBI. So the TBIs are facilities designed to nurture and accelerate the establishment and growth of technology-based startups through the provision of business and mentoring support offered both in the incubator and through its network of key players in the industry. So yung nakabilog dyan in red, si CDO b.i.t.e.s, which kung saan kayo ngayon, is just one of the 30 TBIs established and funded by the DOST-P in partnership with the University of Science and Technology in Southern Philippines. So actually, matagal na namin partner si USTP kasi naabutan pa namin si MUST. So it was Mindanao University of Science and Technology pa, which later on became USTP. So gano'n na kami katagal naging partners ni CDO b.i.t.e.s. And you guys, being part of the CDO b.i.t.e.s as their incubatees and our startups, you're also part of the TBI family. So your success is also our success. And so far, since we established our Technology Business Incubator, so kasama kayo dito sa metrics na ito, we already nurtured more than 678 startups. We already produced more than 163 full-blown companies. So ibig kasi sabihin ng full-blown companies, those companies that are registered, we created over 2,500 jobs, generated 252 million in private investments, and generated over 450 million in terms of startup revenue. So siguro yung iba sa inyo hindi pa na cover nitong metrics na ito kasi most of those startups that we have already covered in these metrics are those na na-register na. So then again, there goes the importance of startup registration. Kasi hanggat hindi kayo nag-register as a startup, parang sort of wala pa kayong legitimacy to operate. So there. So next slide, please. So we also partnered with the DOST, DTI, and DICT for the DOST, DTI, DICT Assistance Startup Assistance Program for 2019 to 2023. It's basically a 5-year action plan with the goal of generating or creating 1,000 startups by 2023. So currently we have 678 startups. So ang goal namin by 2023, maging 1,000 startups tayo. And it's not just startups lang. So when may qualifier dyan. Oh. So when we say startups earning revenues and startups that are receiving funding. So then again, for you to be able to earn your revenues, kailangan mo pakita ng resibo. And for you to be able to get funded, kailangan ikaw ay isang legitimate or legal entity. So there goes again the importance of registration. So sana by 2023, yung 1,000 startups namin, kasama kayo dyan sa bilang na yan. And we started it in 2019, so we already had 2 years along the road. That's why we have the hashtag road to 1,000 startups. So we still have 3 more years to accomplish that goal. And you, the startups in our incubators, really play a very crucial role in this kasi kung wala kayo, hindi namin to maa-achieve. So kaya may ganitong session sila, Mishore, may ganito tayong incubation program. This is basically to contribute to this roadmap. So next slide, please. Excuse me. So the other good news is in 2019, Act or the RA 1133-7, and its implementing rules and regulations or IRR was also signed last November 2020 at the culmination of the Philippine Startup Week. So this is basically the first time that we have such act. So if you can see in this picture, andyan si Secretary ng DOST, Secretary ng DTI, and yung kakaupo lang na secretary that time, si Secretary Hunasan. All three government agencies joined forces to craft programs in line with the provisions of the Innovative Startup Act. So next slide, please. So ano bang meron doon sa Innovative Startup Act? So in a nutshell, sa yung general benefits to startups, basically ang Innovative Startup Act, from the word itself, Startup Act, pinaka-importante talaga na stakeholder for this are the startups. So yung benefit ng Startup Act is to provide support for research and development of startups. It also aims to provide access to the Startup Development Program. Yung Startup Development Program, yun yung general program that all the three agencies will be coming up. It aims to provide support for capability or capacity building or training, exchange programs, expert training courses, local and international. And it also aims to provide support, hindi lang to startups, but also to startup enablers. So it also aims to provide support for participation of startups in international competitions and conferences. Kasi usually yung mga startups natin, wala naman silang budget for them to be able to go abroad. It also aims to provide support for collaborative programs between startups and startup enablers, between startups in the national and local government. And it also aims to develop and amend policies to remove restrictions in the implementation of the Startup Development Program. So currently kasi yung mga policies natin medyo hindi pa siya masyadong friendly sa startup. So yung objective ng Innovative Startup Act is to lessen or at the very at most to remove restrictions on startup implementation of programs and to promote the access to benefits, incentives, and opportunities for startups and startup enablers. Next slide, please. Okay. So yung pinakaunang significant, I'll go by details. So kanina in my previous slide, I mentioned yung overall benefits ng startups, but I'll go detail by detail yung mga specific provisions ng Innovative Startup Act. So the very first feature ng Innovative Startup Act is the registration of startups and startup enablers through the Startup PH website. So currently, si DTI and DICT, they're establishing yung Startup PH website. It's basically a repository of startup information that includes statistics about ilan na ba yung startups sa Philippines, ano yung mga events, ano yung mga programs and benefits that the startups can avail or access. It also serves as an interface for online inquiry, registration, application, and release of results for endorsements and applications for the startup program. So, hindi pa ito yung registration na i-discuss sa inyo mamaya ng ating speakers from the DTI at ni Attorney Inopia. So basically, the registration that I'm referring to this slide is yung registration pa lang doon sa Startup Development Program or yung sa Startup PH website. Kasi before you're able to access the different programs of the government, you have to really register doon sa Startup PH website natin para in a way, ma-count din kayo sa inventory ng startups natin. Kasi currently, wala pa talagang inventory in place kung ilan ba talaga ang startups sa buong Philippines. Yung kanina, minention ko, we have 678 startups. But that's just as far as the TBIs are concerned. Kasi meron naman tayong bilang from the TBIs. But as a country, as a whole, wala pa talaga tayong exact figures in terms of ilan talaga ang startup sa Philippines. So, yun yung purpose ng Startup PH website. It's basically to develop a repository of startup information para kayong mga startups, alam nyo rin kung sino-sino pa ba yung ibang startups that are existing not just in CDO but in other parts of the country. So, yun yung purpose ng Startup PH website. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the Startup PH website. Actually, hindi pa to up kasi this is still under development. So as you can see, meron dyang portion where you will log in or sign up kung meron na kayong account. So you just have to create an account. And then meron siyang specific feature on the programs, ano yung services ng mga government, and even kung ano yung programs that the startup enablers can avail. So this website or the Startup PH website is targeted to be launched in November in time for the Philippine Startup Week 2020. So hopefully by that time when it's up and running, makaregister kayo. So again, ibang registration pa to doon sa DTI and SEC that our two speakers will be discussing this morning. So wag kayo malito. Ito ay for the Startup PH website pa lang as far as the Innovative Startup Act is concerned. So next slide please. So sino ba yung target users ng platform? So as I mentioned earlier, dalawa yung main target beneficiaries ng Startup PH website. Of course, first are the startups and the second one is the startup enablers. And when you say the startup, pwede kang person lang, wala kang kasama. Or you're already an entity or a registered entity. So kung person ka, it could be yung founders, yung innovators, entrepreneurs, or even students. Kahit estudyante ka pa lang, pwede ka na mag-register doon sa Startup PH website natin. And if you're also an entity, you can also register. So yung mga meron na silang sole proprietorship or partnership. Even startup enablers are also encouraged to register for both persons and the entity. So yung mga entity, examples ng entity ng startup enablers are yung incubator. So sila CDO b.i.t.e.s. They can also register sa Startup PH website natin as a startup enabler, and they can also avail of the different programs and funding that the government will provide. So hindi lang ito for the startups, but also for the startup enablers as well. So next slide please. So ito yung specific requirements for you to be able to register to the Startup PH website. So basic information lang naman. Wala, all you need to do is to show a government issued ID. So yung first column is for the regular, ibig sabihin yung mga regular na startups. The second one is for the minor, yung mga startups or yung mga persons na 18 years old and below. And the last one is for alien. Alien kasi yung term, pag ibig sabihin hindi Filipino or foreigner. So that's how they call it. That's how they term it as alien. So hindi pa actually ito final, but basically ito yung na-identify namin na basic requirements. And if you look at it, wala pa dyan yung, we're not yet requiring yung startup, yung DTI and SEC registration. Kasi basically, this is for the registration pa lang muna doon sa startup website. So, hindi naman, it doesn't have to be na when you register to the startup website, kailangan DTI or SEC registered ka na. But later on, I will also discuss to you bakit kailangan nyo pa rin mag-register sa DTI and SEC. So there. Next slide, please. So the other, ito na yung another provision or significant feature ng Innovative Startup Act is the provision of grants for research, development, training, and expansion projects for startups. So next slide, please. So as far as featured, so we have the Startup Grant Program. The goal of the Startup Research Grant Program is to encourage founders to become innovators. So next slide, please. So yung objective ng Startup Research Grant Program namin is for the startups to overcome research and development roadblocks to strengthen your intellectual property, to validate your products to the market, and to prepare startups to scale. Kasi currently naman, if you are a startup, medyo admittedly, lahat yung mga startups natin in the country, medyo wala sila masyadong, medyo limited yung resources nila for them to be able to conduct these activities. Kasi this requires resources. Specifically, this requires money for you to be able to conduct these activities. And that's the gap that the Startup Research Grant is trying to address. So next slide, please. So yung benefits ng startup grant program is for the startups to, of course, number one, to access funds. Basically, that's the objective. The P-Shared will be providing you grants or funds. And we say grants kasi, hindi nyo yun kailangang ibalik. Hindi kasi siya loan. So, it will be given to you talaga. So, sa inyo yun. Hindi nyo siya ibabalik. Wala siyang repayment. It also provides you access to the b.i.t.e.s testing services. So, kung may mga testing requirement na kailangan, you can also avail of those for free or for a reduced testing cost. It also provides you access to the SNT network, access to the b.i.t.e.s TBI network, and access to follow-up scale-up programs. So next slide, please. So ito na ngayon. So ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina na bakit yung kanina minention ko, yung sa startup website natin, hindi pa kayo kailangan mag-register sa DTI or SEC. But later on, makikita nyo na kung bakit kailangan nyo pa din mag-register sa DTI or sa SEC. So, as I mentioned earlier, yung pinaka-primary feature ng startup grant is to provide you with grants. And when I say grants, hindi nyo siya kailangan ibalik. So, but yung catch lang there is you have to be a legally registered startup with the DTI or SEC. So kaya ito yung pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. Ito yung importance ng registration kasi when you apply for the Startup Research Grant and if you want to get funding from the government, you really have to be a legally registered startup. Kasi kami sa DOST or to any government entities, hindi naman kami nagpo-provide ng grants to a person, but rather we provide grants to a legal entity. So yun yung startup. So hindi kami nagpo-provide ng grant, hindi naman papangalan yung cheque kay Shore Macalbi or kay Geisha, but rather papangalan namin yun kay si Wela. Kasi si Wela is one of your startups. And then the second qualification, so tandaan nyo yan ha. So for you to be able to access funds and grants from the DOST, you have to be a legally registered startup. So the designated project leader or staff support must be Filipino citizens. So we give primary priority or importance to Filipino startups. And he or she has demonstrated capability to conduct research and development and has a legal personality to issue an official receipt. So there. So yung fourth requirement natin is anchored yan doon sa number 1. Kasi hindi ka naman makaka-issue ng official receipt kung hindi ka registered. Kung hindi ka registered, kung hindi ka rin nagpipay ng tax, hindi ka nakaka-provide ng official receipt. So next slide please. Sorry, I have to fix my So yung next requirement is yan. So again, you have to submit an authenticated copy of the Articles of Incorporation. Siguro later on when Attorney Inopia discusses you about yung mga requirements or si Miss Roseanne ng ating DTI, they will be discussing to you yung details ng requirements for the Articles of Incorporation. For a person kasi to have this, again, going back to my earlier point, dapat ikaw ay registered. And so as the rest of the requirements. So next slide, please. So sige, I will not discuss this further kasi ang pinaka-point lang naman nitong general qualifications is at least matawid yung muna yung fact that you are a registered startup. Kasi basically, if hindi ka rin registered the startup, both DTI or SEC, you won't be able to avail of the funding. So So yun talaga ang pinaka first hurdle that you have, pinaka first challenge that you have to hurdle, yung startup registration. Sige, next slide please. And siguro later on, our DTI representative will be able to give you a glimpse or more details on paano ba kayo makakapag-register sa DTI. So, actually, maganda itong topic na ito this morning. So, yung other qualification, so other than the startup registration, we would also require na you already have an early stage prototype or proof of concept. Ibig sabihin, meron ka lang na-develop na something. So for example, if you are creating an app, so dapat meron ka nang na maipakita sa amin na app or that it's already working. It doesn't have to be a perfect app kasi kung perfect na siya, ibig sabihin wala na siyang kailangan. So at least an early stage prototype, at least hindi naman siya yung idea pa lang. So dapat meron na kayong working or early stage prototype that you can show to us. And then, so yung number 3, important yan. This program shall give preference to startups incubated in the TBI. So, kung magkakaroon kami ng prioritization, most likely, uunahin talaga namin are the startups that are incubated in our TBIs. Kasi we are confident na yung mga startups natin sa TBIs, since they are being taken care of by our TBI managers, we trust that they are able to deliver the expected outputs for the project. And also, we trust that the TBI managers would be able to handle and to also oversee yung projects that they will be implementing with us. So next slide, please. So even before the Innovative Startup Act was signed, we actually already provided grants to startups. So we had the program in 2018. We called it the Startup Nation. So we already actually funded 15 startups. Ironically, nawala pa si Wela dito sa logo. But one of the 15 startups that we funded was actually Wela, who's from CDO b.i.t.e.s. O, di ba? Ang bongga ng CDO b.i.t.e.s, meron na kayong representative doon sa Startup Nation natin. And I think the Startup Research Grant was very successful in providing support to startups kasi ang layo na ng narating nitong first 15 startups natin. And if you want to know the benefits or if you really want to get first-hand information about how the startup program has provided impact to our startups, you can actually ask Wela about it. Kasi si Wela, if you know Sir John Fiel, they're actually part of the pioneer batch of our startup research grant. So I think they receive around 3 million pesos worth of grant. O, di ba? Ang laki ng 3 million. Ang layo na ng mararating ng startup for a 3 million grant. So we actually gave as much as 7 million to a startup. Sige, next slide please. So after a year, so I mentioned earlier, 15 yung una naming pinondohan. Yung total investment namin for the 15 is 64 million. So after a year lang, just imagine, they were already able to generate 142 jobs. They were able to raise 45 million worth of capital and investment. They were able to acquire 328 clients. And they were able to generate 83.4 million worth of revenues. So if you look at it, 64 million ang investment ng government, yung binalik sa amin is 83 million yung by revenues. Hindi naman siya necessarily bumalik sa amin. But in a way, since it's revenues, mababawasan kasi yan ng tax, babalik din yan sa kaban ng government. So basically parang nag-return on investment na ang government with the 64 million that we have already invested. So just imagine if we're able to provide more, 15 pa lang yan. So hopefully if we're able to provide more funds and more support to more startups, then just imagine the impact that it can create to our startup community. So next slide, please. So the other significant features of the Innovative Startup Act is yung participation to international conferences and competition. So I think Wela was also supported by DOST and DTI as far as sending them to an international event. So yung yung support that is covered by that is yung expedited processing ng travel documents. We also provide partial subsidy or fees, partial or full subsidy for baggage allowance, full or partial subsidy to airfare, and we also provide per diem allowance. So, biruin mo yan, papadala na nga namin kayo abroad. May mga ganyan pang perks. So, 'di ba? Parang uupo na lang kayo sa eroplano at i-enjoy niyo na lang yung conference or competitions abroad. So, next slide please. So, this is just to motivate you guys. So again, bago namin kayo ipapadala abroad, again, the major requirement there is you have to be a registered startup. So, hindi kayo makakapunta abroad if hindi naman kayo registered. So, yun yung importance ng registration. So, just to show you, last 2019, we actually sent 28 startups to the Hong Kong Rise. So, sa Hong Kong Rise to, we actually made history kasi Hong Kong Rise is one of the biggest startup conference in the world. So, I was part of that group that went to Hong Kong that time. And we brought 28 startups, just imagine. And we were the biggest delegation from all across the world. So, biruin mo yon, Philippines, a small country. Kami yung pinakamalaki ang delegation. We made history. Natuwa nga yung ibang, there were actually Filipinos there na who regularly participate. And natuwa sila kasi for the first time, nakita nila na ganun kalaki ang delegation ng Philippines. So ito lang yung some of the programs that we have rolled out and that we have established and implemented with the DTI and DICT. This was a 5-day conference. So 5 days silang andon. So actually we spent around 10 million pesos to support 28 startups. So hopefully ngayon this year, supposedly dapat meron kaming second batch for the Hong Kong Rise. Unfortunately, nag-cancel this year. So hopefully next year, may mapadala pa tayo at sana mas dumami pa. So as early as now, if you want to take part of this event, mag-register na kayo para maka-apply kayo to be part of this initiative. Okay, next slide please. So another feature of the act is yung creation of startup venture fund, but this is basically medyo for the more mature startups na ito. These are basically for the startups that are already earning revenue. So, hindi ko na siya masyadong i-discuss kasi most of you naman are early stage startups pa. Hindi pa kayo sa ganitong level of wala pa kayo sa ganitong level. But this is basically for those startups na medyo malaki na yung revenues that they generate. Sige, next slide please. And then we also provide support for the creation of Philippine Startup Eco Zones, inclusion of startups in the investment development plan. It aims to provide startups access to the benefits and incentives provided under the mandate of the BOI. So later on, pag nag-register na kayo, nag-earn kayo ng income, you can actually also avail of yung mga tax incentives. So may mga tax holidays, o biruin mo yon, kumikita ka na nga, wala ka pang tax, or at the very least, mababa na yung tax mo kasi you're able to provide tax incentives with the BOI. So kasama din yan sa benefits ng Innovative Startup Act. So actually, ang daming benefit ng Innovative Startup Act natin. So next slide please. And then ito naman, another significant features of the app is yung startup visa. So what's interesting about this feature is yung Innovative Startup Act natin does not only support Filipino startups, but rather it also encourages foreign startups to do business in the Philippines. Actually, medyo madaming tumaas ang kilay dito na fact. But the objective really here is to provide a competitive environment din sa mga startups para mas lalong ma-motivate ang startups to do better kasi meron na silang mga foreign counterparts or mga foreign competitors. So if you are a foreigner, say for example, if you're a startup from Singapore and if you think merong market dito sa Philippines and if you want to establish traction and you want to make business here in the Philippines, you can actually avail of the startup visa. So basically, meron din kayong registration, meron din kayong fast track processing ng mga visas yo. So meron tayong ganitong features din. So hindi lang ito para sa Filipino startups but also for foreign startups. So kasi iba, even yung sa Singapore, di ba? They're also ang daming Filipino startups that are doing business in Singapore. So kung Singapore nga, welcome sila to Filipino startups. So I think it's also high time that we Filipinos welcome foreign startups. Next slide, please. And lastly, it also aims to provide education programs and incentives to institutions offering entrepreneurial education courses or training. So basically, mga universities to or incubators, kung gusto nilang mag-come up ng programs, pwede rin silang pondohan ng government. So next slide, please. So I think yun yung pinaka-meat nung aking talk kanina. So I just want to emphasize again yung importance nung registration kasi ang dami kong programs na binida kanina, but the bottom line is hindi mo pa rin maa-avail yung programs na yon if you're not yet registered. So again, I would like to stress the importance of startup registration. It's basically the first step to availing the different programs of the governments and even the private sector. Even if you talk to private sector, when they want to invest in your startup, hahanapan din kayo nila ng registration. Oh, SEC registered ka na ba? Or are you a DTI registered na ba? Kasi it will give them more confidence to invest in your startup. Kasi otherwise, say for example, yung logic ko lang is, kunwari ikaw ay isang person pero wala kang birth certificate, kolorum ka, parang 'di ba hindi ka makakapag-apply to any office kahit siguro mag-enroll ka sa school kung wala kang birth certificate. Parang technically kolorum ka or illegitimate ka. So that's basically the logic behind the importance of startup registration. So what to look forward to in the coming months. So we're basically we're actually currently finalizing yung guidelines namin for the Startup Act to make it more friendly to startup. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks we will be holding public consultations with the startups. Babalikan namin kayo. Ipe-present namin ulit yung mga programs that I mentioned earlier on a more detailed scenario. We will be gathering inputs from you kasi kayo yung primary stakeholders namin. We also, after that, we'll be issuing na yung detailed guidelines and hopefully by November, target namin during the TBI Summit on the second Philippine Startup Week, we will be able to launch yung b.i.t.e.s Startup Research Grant. So hopefully by that time, at least yung iba sa inyo nakapag-register na sa DTI or sa SEC. Sige, next slide please. So also one interesting event that I just want to share to you. So this year we'll be holding the Philippine Startup Week 2020. This would be the virtual conference. So this will be the second time that we will be holding the Philippine Startup Week. So since this is virtual, madali na lang kasi you don't have to fly to Manila. So I'm inviting you everyone to participate. I think CDO b.i.t.e.s is one of the TBI, so also doing activities in line for this Philippine Startup Week. So I would really encourage you to participate in activities. Sige, next slide please. So in a nutshell, ito yung different activities that the Philippine Startup Week, it's basically a partnership between the government and the private sector. So yung 3 main programs dyan, yung malalaking squares, yan yung mga activities ng 3 government agencies. Yung mga small colored rectangles and squares, those are activities that are organized simultaneously by the different private sectors. So ang daming ganap. So simultaneous yan all over the Philippines. So I think meron dito TBI features CDO b.i.t.e.s, that's on November 25. So I hope you guys can take a look at this. We will be putting up a registration website where you can access all the different events. So medyo excited din kami dito kasi this is the first time that we are doing this virtually, and on the good side naman, we're happy that this is virtual. As much as possible, we are hoping and we're expecting more participants kasi last year yung first summit namin, our first Philippine Startup Week, we were able to generate around 6,000 attendees and it was a physical event. How much more now that it's a virtual event? So we expect more participants. So next slide, please. So I think that ends my presentation. If you have questions, I think we still have time for question and answer, right, Miss Shore? So I hope
Yes.
you learned some. I hope you learned something from that. do you have Do you have questions? I'm open to questions na pala.
So I think we have questions, but Ruchil will be facilitating the Q&A. Right.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so hi, sir. I'm Rachel. Okay, let's proceed with our question and answer portion.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so but before that, entertaining questions from our incubatees, I would like to start with this question just to clear things up, okay, with our
Sure.
participants. Now, what is the difference between what is the difference between registering in DTI and with SEC? Is there a preferred one of
Yung
by
sa
UST?
yeah, for yung sa funding requirement namin, ngayon medyo naging lenient kami sa requirement. Dati kasi requirement ano yon and yon before dati. So SEC and DTI. Pero ngayon ginawa naming or.
Okay, hello, Sir Edward. Are you still there?
Let's wait for him to come back. I think he's having technical difficulties with the internet connection.
Okay, while waiting for Sir Edward, you may post your questions at our chat box or you may raise your hand.
Let's wait for Sir Edward to return to the session. I think due to the internet connection difficulties, he has been forced to leave the Zoom session. Right, he just messaged me. He got disconnected, and he'll be reconnecting in a while.
Hello?
Hi,
Hi,
sir.
sir. Welcome back.
Yeah, can you hear me ba?
Yes, yes, we can.
Saglit lang, I'll just get my headset ha. Ayun. Hello?
Hi,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, yeah,
I'm back na.
I'm back na.
I-leave ko lang yung
I-leave ko lang yung sa kabila.
Okay. So, saan nga tayo kanina?
Okay. Sir, you may continue with what you were saying with the difference in DTI and SEC registration, and why is it that you recommend just either of the two and instead of both?
Okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, ano siya, you can either register to DTI or SEC. Meron kasing limitations ang mas mahirap kasi talaga mag-register sa SEC.
Why is that so, sir?
But I think ang mas maganda naman sa SEC, once you're an SEC registered company, mas madami kang programs or services that you can avail. It will give you more confidence also. Siguro sa end naman ng mga investors, mas may confidence sila pag alam nilang SEC registered ka kasi ang primary consideration actually ng mga investors when they invest in a startup is yung team composition. So ibig sabihin kasi kung buo na yung team mo, ibig sabihin medyo solid na yung startup mo kasi you already have an articles of incorporation, medyo established na. So yun yung pagkakaiba. So ako I would encourage siguro for the purpose of availing of the grants as far as the DOST is concerned. Pwedeng DTI muna para medyo mas madali. But while working on your DTI, might as well also work on your SEC registration para mas maging established kayo as a startup. So there.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I hope that is clear to all our incubatees. Next, we have a question from RG of Dirtbag.
Yeah, sure. What's the question?
Sir
Sir, good
RG?
morning.
Okay.
Hi RG, good morning.
We're already SEC registered, sir. So I'm just very interested with the tax breaks. So how can we do that specifically? Where to start?
Okay. Yung sa as far as the tax breaks, medyo ano pa yan, medyo malayo pa, medyo currently ginagawa pa ng DTI at PEZA yung guidelines. But ang mangyayari kasi noon, si incubator nyo or si CDO b.i.t.e.s, we're lobbying sa PEZA na ang mga TBIs natin will be considered as eco zones or industrial parks. Kasi once they are considered as eco zones or eco parks, they can already certify startups. So pag na-certify na kayo ng say for example, by the time na naging eco zone na si CDO b.i.t.e.s na accredit na siya ni PEZA, si CDO b.i.t.e.s, they will also recognize you as as their startup. So that's the time na parang meron lang specific certification that they will release to you, and then that's the time you can already apply for tax breaks. But as far as the amount of the tax breaks, hindi pa medyo na pag-uusapan kung ilang percent or kung totally free ba siya. So yung ngayon kasi medyo focus pa muna kami doon sa startup research grant. Yung sa startup tax, that's being taken care of kasi of the DTI. Sila yung medyo mas may concern dyan kasi sa kanila yung sa BOI. So hindi pa ako masyadong familiar in terms of ilang percent ba talaga, but the things that I mentioned you earlier are just the things that I know.
Thank you, sir.
Sige.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, RG from Dirtbag. We have a point here from cards from Dirtbag. SEC is for corporation and DTI is for single proprietorship. So I hope that's clear. Okay.
Yep.
So there's no need to register for both. Okay. Thank you, Dirtbag representatives. How about the other incubatees? Shift Tech, Piso, Hand Sanitizer, Checkmate, and Ihatid. Any representative?
None so far for Checkmate, ma'am.
Okay. Going once, twice. Okay. So how about our previous incubatee? Lynn from Pikatok, do you have a question?
No, ma'am, I'm good.
Okay. How about our guest from Caraga State University, Sir Rolin Dagil?
Hi,
Sir,
Sir
do you have
Rolin.
any?
Andiyan pala si Sir Rolin. Anong ginagawa ni Sir Rolin dito?
Yes.
Sir Rolin, kumusta?
Hi, Edward.
Napasyal
Dito
ka.
napasyal ka napasyal ako dito kasi yun sa SEC.
Okay. You're also interested.
Yeah, actually we're trying to know what are our options towards yung sa SEC registrations.
I think later on that will be discussed in details by our attorney or si Miss Rosan. Siguro si Attorney Inopia yung mag-represent later about the requirements.
And Edward, with regards dun sa yung accreditations ng TBI ba? Towards mga
becoming ecozones.
So mangyayari ba yan maybe next year?
Hopefully, kasi actually after ng TBI program natin, yung next program namin is we're establishing the program which we call Spark, SNT Parks. So we will be upgrading our TBIs to become SNT Parks. And once you become SNT Parks, kasama na dyan yung certification or accreditation nyo as an ecozone. So yun yung target namin next year.
Wow. Looking forward, Edward.
So ang dami nating gagawin.
Yeah, I think for me that's all for now.
Thank you, Sir Rolin.
Thank you, Edward.
Okay, thank you, Sir Edward. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
How about the others? Last call. Going once. Twice. Okay, so since it's also 9:52, I think we have to end our Q&A session and proceed to our next session. Thank you so much, Sir Edward. Okay, we will be handing the we'll be emailing the certificate later. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Wala ko mag-picture muna tayo, sabi ni Shirley.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so
yes.
Everyone, please turn on your cameras for a moment before we head on to the next part of our session. Okay. Sandali. Ako naman yung hindi maka-on.
Speaker view nyo na muna.
Alright.
Yes, nice to see you,
Okay.
everyone.
Everyone on na? Okay. Okay. Hi, Ed, cards. Okay.
So, on your cue, Miss Shore.
Okay. Sige. Smile. Okay. Wala na habol. Okay. Smile, everyone. 3, 2, 1, go. All right. Okay
Right.
na.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank
Edward.
you. Sure.
Bye.
Good luck on your... Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. All right, everyone. So that's the end of the first part of our session. And now we'll head on to the second one, which is one of the sessions that we look forward to, of course. But actually, this is entirely an interesting session because of the topics that we have covered and we will be covering. So next part of our virtual session will be a talk from Ms. Roseanne Marie San Juan, who is the Trade and Industry Development Specialist under the Consumer Protection Division of DTI Misamis Oriental. She is also the Consumer Education and Advocacy Officer and Mediation Officer. So this morning, she will be talking about business registration specifically under DTI. So, huwag na natin patagalin. I'll be giving the virtual floor now to Ms. Roseanne.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Shore. Ayan, good morning, everyone. I'm clearly here naman, no? Ayan, so good morning to our incubatees and good morning to all the rest po who are participating in this Saturday morning's webinar session. So in behalf of my Provincial Director, Ma'am Almer Masiliones. DTI Misamis Oriental would like to thank CDO b.i.t.e.s for this invitation, for this opportunity to discuss the basics po of business name registration, which is under DTI. If you may allow me, I will be sharing my screen for my presentation. Okay, so when we talk about DTI, kanina sinabi ni engineer na, does everyone see my screen na? Okay na ba? Okay na po ba? Miss Geisha?
Yes.
Okay na po. Okay, sige. So when you talk about business name registration, like what engineer said kanina, yung first speaker natin, there are different, for everyone's information, we start with, there are different ways of registering your business name, yung pangalan ng identity ng iyong business. That's for when you talk about sole proprietorship or isa lang po ang nagmamay-ari, isa lang po ang registered owner, that's under DTI. When you talk about partnership corporation, that's under SEC. Later, maybe po, meron na tayong, if you've heard one person corporation, baka i-discuss yun ng SEC because that's under SEC. And if you can also register your business name under CDA, pag cooperative naman. So for this morning, we will be talking about sole proprietorship under one ownership registration of business name under DTI. So, pakilala ko muna po si DTI. More than, aside from business name registration, si DTI po, our office, coordinates, promotes, facilitates, and regulates countries' trade, industry, and investment activities. We deal with investors, exporters, businessmen in general, small, medium enterprises. Diyan po magfo-fall yung mga startup. Yan, later, ang pangarap po namin sa bawat startup is you would be globally competitive. Ayan, you will really, from startup, maging malaking company kayo and you will grow globally competitive. Also, we deal with businessmen in general and as well as consumers. At the end of the day, all of us are consumers. So for our office, we have two-pronged mission that's enabling business and empowering consumers. When you talk about enabling business, we start with the basic. Gaya na sinabi ni engineer kanina, there are a lot of government programs for MSMEs or for business or for startup mga MSMEs. But we start with the very basic. Make your business legit, starting to register your business name. Yeah. So when you talk about business name, we are aligned to what we call as the business name law. Yeah. So this is Act number 38383. It is an act to regulate the use in business transactions of names other than the true names, prescribing the duties of the director of our bureau, that's the DTI. And also, this is the law that governs business registration. Bakit may hindi lang siya nag-pop up, tara, let's have a business name registration under DTI. But there is a law that supports why there is a need for registration of business name. So that's under Act 4147 and RA 863. So business name registration, the primary purpose of business name law is to provide protection to the public dealing with business establishments through disclosure of identity, citizenship of the person owning and operating of the business, as well as other facts of records under our office. So like for example, you are a consumer, you are a client, you have that certain security and confidence when you know that the person or the business that you are dealing with is legit. Meaning, naka-register po ng business name under DTI or under SEC or under CDA, which gives them also the next step na kumuha ng license to operate as a business in an area, which is through the mayor's permit. So what is business name? So business name or BN shall refer to any name that is different to the true name of the individual or the owner, which is used or signed in connection to the business they are engaging into. So ito po yung pangalan nga nakalagay po sa mga resibo ninyo under BIR. This is also, once you have an approved business name under DTI, ito po yung pangalan or the trade name that will register sa LGU for the business permit. Ito din yung naka-register when you register your business sa BIR. And like what I've said kanina, when you print out receipts na accredited ni BIR, yan po yung lalabas na business name po. So business name registration required? Yes, definitely it is required. Aside from the fact po na mas encouraging yung sinabi ng first speaker natin na with your registration, it will allow you, with your business name registration, it will allow you to be able to avail of government projects or fundings or mga grants po gaya ng sinabi ng first speaker natin. So who may apply business name? Filipino citizen. Ang ano lang po natin requirement is 18 years of age. So there should be an ID that will prove po na 18 years old na po yung gustong mag-engage or who is doing business in the Philippines. For non-Filipino citizens naman, mga foreigners, they should obtain a certificate of registration of sole proprietorship or certificate of authority to engage in business in the Philippines or that is supported by Foreign Investment Act. So, ganun pa din, at least 18 years of age. So what are the requirements in registering a business? Simple lang po. When you talk about DTI, hindi na tayo, in response to EODB also, this is a simple transaction po na basic lang po yung requirements. One is if you are the owner, you go to our office, you just have to have the duly accomplished application form. And then signed by the owner po. Kung kayo po yung nagpa-process, signed by you. And then you present at least one original ID na government issued na with signature. And then you pay the corresponding fee based on the territorial scope plus yung kaukulang documentary stamp which is 30 pesos. When you talk about territorial scope, this is the barangay, that's 200 pesos. Yun po yung pinakamura. City, municipality, regional, and national. So, when you talk about territorial scope, ano bang ibig sabihin nun? Kasi it is the business name that you are registering under DTI. So, pag barangay po, for example, ang niregister mo barangay, you're paying 230. And nakalagay po sa business name registration application form nyo for business details is Barangay Carmen. Meaning, sa Barangay Carmen, pwede po kayong mag-multiple branches. Pero when you talk about your business name, wala ka pong pwedeng makaparehong business name in Barangay Carmen. Pero pwede na in Barangay Gusa, kung ganun ka siguro ganun ka usual lang yung pangalan ng business name mo, pwede kang magkaroon ng similar name in a separate or in a different barangay. Kasi yung territorial scope mong pinili is barangay lang po. So for city municipality, meaning in the city or municipality kung saan yung business mo, pwede kang magkaroon ng multiple branches. Yung multiple branches na yun, bawat isa doon mayroong business permit. And you can have within the city or the municipality, wala kang kaparehong pangalan. Same with the regional, kung region 10 po tayo. And then as well as for national, kung gusto mo talaga, you see that your business, ayaw mo may kaparehong pangalan sa buong Pilipinas, you can go for the highest po na amount for territorial scope, that's national, that's 2,000 plus 30 pesos na documentary stamp. Ayan, like what I've said po, the territorial scope, pwede po sometimes we also take into consideration yung mga small businesses natin. They only have limited budget. So what we tell them, pwede naman po, you can start your registration with barangay muna, that's 230. And then if you see that you would want to have another branch in another barangay outside your territorial scope, we have naman po a way for expanding your business or expanding your territorial scope. It can be through another application, same na business name, same owner, ibang barangay lang po or business location. Or kung gusto mo, one business name lang na registration certificate, we have a feature po for our system that's upgrade of territorial scope. You just have to have po to fill up a form for upgrading, tick yung sa may area for upgrade, and then from your current na territorial scope, ano na po yung new nyo na territorial scope. And then we'll check with the system if wala pong makakabangga na naunang nakapag-register na po. If wala namang problema with our system, then ma-approve po yung updating of territorial scope, and then you will pay the corresponding payment of the new territorial scope. So, how to name your business? So, ito po yung challenging kasi we want to also have a name na tatatak talaga to everyone. Na ito na yung pangalan ng business mo, hindi na magbabago kasi this is what you want as name that will resound to everyone para makilala yung business mo. So, for business registrability po, for our system, there's a difference lang po with our new system. As per September 2019, we have a new system that's the BNRS next gen. Medyo mas stricter na po yung system namin. Mas specific na po. Later we'll try po, we'll log into our system and then titignan natin kung paano na ba mas stricter na po than before. If you were able to register yung from our old system, yun po, any business, pwedeng maghalo, 2 types of business, pwedeng gamitin yung mga business descriptor, pero with our new system, it is more specific and meron na pong hindi na pwedeng gamitin ng mga descriptor. When you talk about business registrability, your business name has 2 parts. That's the dominant and the business descriptor. For example, Juan Watch Repair Shop. Before in our old system, pwede lang po yung Juan Repair Shop. Pero with our new system, it is specific like what I said. So dapat specific kung anong type of repair services do you engage into. So for the business name na Juan Watch Repair Shop, the dominant is Juan. Ito po yung pangalan na gusto nyong makilala kayo, ganyan. Para bang kung ikaw po yung tao, you have a nickname, so yun yung usual na mas makikilala sa inyo. And then the business descriptor is the name, the second part of the business name that will describe the kind of business engagement that you are getting into. So yung watch repair shop, yan po yung business descriptor. So for all the applicants, it is your responsibility to ensure that your proposed business name is, one, not and will not be used for business na illegal po, offensive, scandalous, or contrary to propriety. Parang yung into huweteng, yung mga betting stations, boobs massage, yung mga offensive and scandalous na mga terms. And as well as yung mga illegal engagement ng business. Next is not the same or nearly the same as an existing registered business, company, partnership, corporation, or cooperative name. Ayan, minsan po kasi as Pinoy, sometimes mahilig tayo na different spelling lang pero sounds like a certain sikat na or established na company. So, bawal po yung Andox, Lechon kasi meron na pong ganon. Si Jollibee, iba lang yung spelling. Pero po, then Starbucks, iba lang yung spelling. Pero there's already a Starbucks coffee shop na existing na for the longest period and sikat na po, ganyan, established na. So not composed nearly generic or geographic words. Ayan, so bawal po yung gumamit ng mga geographic words such as Mindanao, Luzon, mga ganyan po. Not a name which or regulation cannot be appropriated. So yung mga ginagamit na terms like OTOP, that's a program under DTI, intelligence, state, or state college. Next is not used to designate or distinguish or suggestive of quality of any class of goods or articles or merchandise. Bawal po yung mga words na best, yung mga A-I, mga ganyan po. So not used by governmental DTI services, DTI trading, not a name or abbreviation of any nation or intergovernmental national organization like WHO, health services, ganyan po. And lastly, is not deceptive, misleading, or which misrepresent the name of the business. Like for example, naka-register na business name is Gold Construction Services, pero yung nature of business, recruitment pala. So hindi mag-coincide yung business name mo with your actual business transaction or business engagement. Reminders for everyone. Ayan. So, yung business name should contain letters in English or Filipino. Pwede rin gumamit na ng mga numbers, pero hindi po pwedeng gumamit ng special characters. Such as ABC, ang pwede po is reading, hindi po pwedeng @ sign na special character and mixed with other letters po in the alphabet. For apostrophe, for use of apostrophe, bawal po siya to be used before a word or ano lang po, yung parang pampa-add nung design ng iyong pangalan, but it should be used appropriately. Like CADS store, meaning yung ownership, the use of the apostrophe is for ownership of that particular store. So, D, apostrophe, mga D, the, A, and mga articles po, hindi po siya pwedeng gamitin. Magre-red po yung system natin and you cannot proceed with your business name registration. Yan. Like what I've said po, effective September of last year with the new BNRS system, mas specific na po yung business name descriptor natin. And kung ano po yung nasa system, hindi po tayo, ako, like for example, as for me, I also have the capacity po, I was allowed to also process business name registration. With the business name registration, for us mga verifiers po, we cannot override the system just to give into ano yung gusto ng client because especially for the descriptor end po and all the ano po checking and verification, it is system based. So bawal na pong gumamit. Kung dati general merchandise okay lang, trading pwede. Enterprises pwede, lessor, and meron pa pong iba, you just have to check with the system. Bawal na po yan ngayon kasi like what I've said, when you talk about general merchandise or enterprises, there are those previously na registered ng DTI na enterprises. So pag enterprises, you can engage into either service-based, either retail or trading. So, hindi siya specific. Even for general merchandise, hindi specific kung ano yung engagement mo. So, ngayon, with the new system, it is very specific and it is system-based po. Use of your complete name can also be pwede po, allowed by our for processing, especially if gusto mong buong pangalan mo yung gamitin mo for your business name para makilala talaga na ito yung may-ari ng business, ito yung gusto kong business name. As long as the name that you are using is your name, is the owner's name. Hindi po pwede na another person's name tapos yung owner, iba yung pangalan. So, hindi po tayo pwede. Yung ganun. Only for partnership and corporation, registered ang SEC na pwede pong gumamit ng company or the word corporation or incorporation. Kasi po, wala pong ganun na mga words in our descriptor list po. So validity and renewal, for business name registration, valid po siya ng 5 years. Then you get to renew it every 5 years. Yan. So for renewal po, early filing is at least 3 months before the expiration date. Pwede na po kayong mag-early renewal. For regular filing, you are allowed from the time po na expiration a few days or a day before the expiration or on the day of the expiration of your business name up to the 3rd month after the expiration of your business name, that's called regular filing. Pero if on the 4th month after the expiration date, 4th month to 6 months po kayong mag-register, that's considered as late filing. So, pag late filing, meron na po tayong penalty. So, penalty is 50% of the registration fee as surcharge. So, for example, on the 4th to 6 months after the expiration date kayo naka-register po, ang ano natin dyan is, example, yung business territorial scope nyo is the barangay, that's 200. So, for penalty, 50% of the 200 madadagdag po dun sa inyong payment when you do the renewal. For everyone's information, lalo na po dun sa mga nakapag-register under DTI, after 6 months from the date of the expiration, after 6 months po, mawawala po sa system automatically yung business name ninyo. So, it will then, pag example, ganun, nawala na po siya sa system after 6 months, that is considered new application. Pag new application po, yung parameters of the new system will be applicable kasi new na po yung registration ninyo. Yan. So there are different ways of processing your business name application, both renewal and as well as the new. So pwede kayo mag-over the counter. You can go for DTI po as long as you are the owner or your authorized person has your filled up and signed na application form, merong authorization letter signed by the owner and the authorized person at meron siyang original government issued ID ng owner and original government issued ID din yung authorized person, you can go to any DTI office or negosyo center. Yan. So, ang system po kasi namin is it's encompassing the area where you are. As long as you are the owner or your authorized representative has the complete requirements needed for processing of business name, pwede po kayo pumunta any DTI. Dito po sa Cagayan de Oro, we have 2 DTI offices. I am under the Misamis Oriental Provincial Office. That's ano po yung old na informatics na school that's near that's within Divisoria, near the court at bangpo ng PBCom. So that's the provincial office. The one in Corrales is the regional office. So it just so happened that the regional office is within the same area or city of the provincial office. So pwede po either in the regional office or PO, you can have it over the counter. Ayan, face-to-face po. Pero lalo na po ngayon that we are encouraging online application, pwede po kayong pumunta sa BNRS na website po, and then you can do your application online. Pwede po if you have GCash, debit card, or credit card, or PayMaya, you can have a through and through application online. We also have what we call hybrid application. Nag-online kayo, and then you were given a reference code. You just have to print the undertaking, signed by the owner, and then the payment, kasi kung wala kayong GCash, debit card, or PayMaya, you can have the payment in any DTI office po. So that's what you call hybrid application. So like what I've said, especially in this time of pandemic, our office, DTI, on the national level po, we definitely encourage everyone po to have it registered online. Kasi faster, wala na pong long lines, hindi na po kayo mas exposed kasi you're gonna travel, tapos punta kayong office, and then meron pang ibang mga clients. And as long as you have your internet, as long as you have GCash or any forms of debit card, and then PayMaya, you can have it registered online through and through, and you can have it also ma-email po sa email ad ninyo yung inyong OR, and as well as your business name certificate. Yan. So payment schemes for online registration is like what I've said, through GCash, Land Bank, and PayMaya. So allow me also to share to you videos para po meron kayong idea on if I have GCash, I have PayMaya, ano pong pwede nating process for that. So let me share to you videos. These are just short video clips po. I have 4 videos pero short lang po to. Ang pinakamahaba po is 2 minutes, yung dalawa. Just to give you an overview of how to register online and how to also make use of other modes of payments online.
Magtatayo ka ba ng negosyo? Simulan sa pag-register ng iyong business name. Meet the newest DTI BNRS Next Gen. Di na kailangang pumila sa negosyo center. Mag-apply ng iyong business name online, anytime, anywhere. Mabilis lang. From application, payment, hanggang sa pag-download ng iyong certificate, just visit bnrs.dti.gov.ph. Mas pinadali ang pagbabayad ng iyong business name application gamit ang mga online payment options tulad ng e-wallet, online banking, at debit or credit cards. Ang dali, di ba? At kung mag-renew ka naman, pwedeng-pwede rin. Mag-apply o mag-renew ng business name with BNRS Next Gen.
Land Bank and BankNet ATM cardholders may now pay for business name registration at the DTI using the Land Bank Link.Biz portal. No more waiting in line and no more worrying about carrying cash in public. Paying is easy with these simple steps. On the Land Bank website, click on Land Bank Link.Biz portal. On the Link.Biz portal page, press Pay Now to begin. Enter or select Department of Trade and Industry for the merchant name and press Continue. Select type of fee. For example, click BN Registration National, then press Continue. Make sure you have the following details ready to proceed with your online payment. Input amount to be paid in the reference. Select payment mode. For example, Land Bank ATM, the Select Payment Mode option box. Input your 10-digit Land Bank account number. After which, proceed with the CAPTCHA challenge. Take time to read the terms and conditions before checking the box provided. Wait for your OTP through SMS or email. Then continue to the next page and make a final review before entering your ATM account information, the account number, your email. Input your OTP, JAI, and PIN using the PIN pad on the screen. A payment confirmation will be